Good morning, everyone. My name is Antonin G, and this will be a short introduction to my training for teacher on the topic of misinformation. To introduce myself, I am both a sci-fi writer and a PhD psychological researcher focused on conspiracy belief and how they interact with information, misinformation, and the political world. We will start our training by asking ourselves what is fake news, because we will see that fake news is a very blurry concept and it does not encompass the complexity of misinformation. So as a start, what is fake news? Well, this is something that is not true. It's usually on media and social media, and it's usually with the aim of deceive the person. Fake news were popularized in 2016 with Donald Trump that said it in a press conference. And now we're going to see the limitation of this concept. For example, how about parody? When one article is clearly a joke, is it a fake news? This article from The Onion, so a parodic newspaper, is a joke, but technically it is a fake news. Also, fake news is too broad. There's subpart of fake news. There is disinformation, when you know you are saying something that is not true, but you say it anyway for propaganda purpose, for example. And misinformation is when you believe something is true, even if it's not, and you say it. So misinformation is when you are saying it's fake news, but you think it's true information. In the research world, we are using misleading news, which is more precise than fake news because some information can be partly true, can be exaggerated, or can be true but lead to wrong conclusion. So to sum up, there's a lot of limitation of the concept of fake news. Does it include parody? Is it disinformation or misinformation? It avoids the continuum of misinformation. There's fake news, true information, and in between there's a continuum, and we need to be aware of that when we think about misinformation and disinformation online. So this is the conclusion of our first part. Second part is how to assess the credibility of information. We all have some tips to check information on social media or on media. It will be reliability of the source, of the interlocutor, the level of evidence, how many sources are talking about this information, and if it's credible, and if there's some criticism of this information. But we're going to see in the next part that sometimes a very solid newspaper can provide fake news. Sometimes we will see that some very experts, so this is the GX, so they are experts you can trust. Some doctor, for example, were very trustworthy, but they said fake news. This is Andrew Wakefield, who is the first doctor to make a connection between vaccine and autism, which is not true, but it had a huge impact on modern society, and it's because he was a scientist that people believed him. So you can be an expert and said some wrong information. Level of evidence. Once again, what is an evidence? When do you need an evidence? How many evidence do you need according to the information? We're going to think about that. And now with AI, is it evidence that both of these persons are alive? Of course not. So evidence is also a very blurry concept. Some evidence I believe to be very solid, like DNA, but sometimes it can be wrong. And look at this video and tell me, what does it prove? Okay, so when I show this video to people, they will interpret that as, oh yeah, okay, so this is in Ukraine and they pretend to be dead. Maybe it's just to show there's people are dying in Ukraine, or it's a trick to get money to keep fighting, etc., etc. The truth is, this is not in Ukraine. This is in Australia. This is a protest against global warming. What you can read under it is just a breaking news. So this is two different information, but because you don't have the context, you will believe this video is shot in Ukraine. And so you will believe, you will create a fake news based on a true information. once again, fake news is not a very reliable concept. Sometimes real information can lead you to the wrong conclusion. Sometimes also many sources can talk about something wrong. That was very important in France a few years ago. A lot of newspapers talk about finding this person and it was not true. Credibility of the information. Sometimes you say, oh, I know when information seems true or seems not true. Okay, so here's a question. There's three information coming up. Which one is true? Which one is not? This one, or this one? They all seems credible or not. We don't really know. The first one is not true, and the second and third one is true. But it's hard to guess at the first time. Criticism, fact-checking. Fact-checking is very important, but also fact-checking can be used to spread propaganda. So once again, it's more complicated. So to sum up, we've seen that those are very important criteria to determine if an information is fake news or not, but it's not 100% sure. We need to be aware of that if we want to have a broad picture of misinformation and disinformation. Now let's go further. What in our brain stop us from good information analysis? Well, there's something called cognitive bias, which you might have heard of. It's the way the brain processes to reach a conclusion which can be wrong. So you reach a conclusion, but not for the right reason. And this will impact our way to process information. Confirmation bias. The human brain has a tendency to confirm what I already think is true. If I believe something and I've got another news that confirm what I believe, I would trust it, even if there's no evidence, even if it's not true. On the contrary, if I get an information that contradicts what I think, I will say, nah, this is fake news. So according to what you already believe, you will say something is true or something is fake news with no evidence, just because you want to believe or you don't want to believe. Second one is availability bias, which is the tendency for the brain to reach a conclusion just according to what information you get. So let's say you have a very complex topic and you just get three information of this topic, you will believe this is all the topic, which is an issue because, of course, there's a lot of complex situation in the world right now, and the social media only give us a tiny hint of that, a bias hint. And because we only have this view of the situation, we are going to make false conclusion. And this go hand to hand with hasty generalization, where you see one example and you believe they're all like that. Once again, this is an issue we have the brain. The brain like to make things simple, but sometimes simple is not the right answer. And finally, causation bias. This is a tendency to believe that if A and B arrive at the same time, your brain will think that A causes B or B causes A. You will think there's a causation effect. Just like you can believe that this is a cat that bent the roof. And of course, this is not the case. This is two different events, but your brain will make a causation bias. Once we know that, what can we do? Well, there's some tips. First one is the mystery of the golden tooth, which is, okay, to make it very short, there was a kid a long time ago who had a golden tooth, and people were wondering why did he have a golden tooth? Is it because God was blessing us, etc., etc.? And one person said, wait, before we think about why, let's ask ourselves, is it true? And so this person checked, and it was not a golden tooth, it was golden paper on the tooth, on the teeth. And this led to a conclusion of de Fontenelle, which said, let us make sure of the fact before worrying about the cause. Is it because of the aluminium they contain that vaccine cause autism? Maybe the question is, does vaccine cause autism? Not true. So let's ask ourselves, is it true? Before trying to understand the consequences. Also, survivor bias. This is a tendency to reach a conclusion only with the examples that survive to us. Let's jump to an example. My parachutes are of excellent quality. No one has ever come to complain. Of course, because the ones that want to complain cannot do it because the parachute didn't work. This is a very important concept. You can see that every day. Oh, the music was much better 40 years ago. No, this is just because only the good music survived until now, and the bad music 40 years ago just disappeared. This was a book that predicted in 2008 COVID in 2020. In 2020, a disease will spread in the world, etc. And people start to believe, oh, maybe this person have a gift as a gift, but maybe not, because there is hundreds of prophecy in this book, and just this one came into realization. This is survivor's bias once again. Finally, now that we know that, now that we know how to treat information, how do we teach it? And what do we do if someone disagrees with us? Let's say, for example, you want to say the earth is round, which is true, and someone say, I don't believe you, I believe earth is flat. In an ideal world, there's an argument. For example, okay, because an airplane could not fly if Earth was round, I believe Earth is flat. In this case, it would be very easy. You just show the person that, of course, it's possible. Therefore, Earth is round. But usually this is not gonna go like that. The person, yeah, so this is the ideal world. But usually this is the opposite. I believe Earth is flat. Therefore, airplane cannot fly. This is just, I'm just defending my belief. It's not an argument. And if you explain that, you say, no, but it's possible for airplane to go around Earth. The person will just go with other argument because this argument is not the cause of the conviction. This is a consequence because there's a belief. And you need to understand there's a belief to understand why it's impossible sometimes to exchange with a person. It can be because the person is a believer or because he's a conspiracy theorist. And I've said that with no judgment. Just this is what I believe. Okay, perfect. Sometimes it's also because of engagement bias, which is when you commit to something for such a long time, you cannot go back because you commit too much. Or this is social context. If there's people around you, you will not admit you are wrong because there's people around you. You don't want to lose face. You need to know that, to understand why it's impossible for the person to admit Earth is round, for example. Once you know that, it's easier to exchange with the person. So this is a list of what can explain why the person will not agree with you or will disagree with your teaching. And there's some tips to go around it. You can show, for example, that you can keep your belief, obviously, and also knowing Earth is round. This is not contradictory. They did that in US, for example. They were using some personal belief to explain why it was important to get vaccinated, and it works. And it worked. With engagement bias, you need to first make a bond with the person. You need to show that you are not attacking the person, but the idea. And what you can do is talk about yourself, explaining why you believe what you believe. Okay, let me tell you why I believe Earth is round. I'm not criticizing your view. I'm just explaining why. I believe that because since 2000, we do that because of we can go around the world with a plane. You just explain you just do storytelling, and by doing so, you are not attacking the person. You are just showing your point of view, and the person can pick up some stuff to start thinking by themselves. Social context. Well, it's very easy. Just go somewhere where there's no social context. On social media, when you are fighting with someone, just go to personal message so that there's no people reading you and it's easier to exchange. It's more peaceful. Okay, now that we have seen that, some general advice. Start with neutral topic and then go to something more complex so that the people can learn the way of thinking in something neutral, and they can apply it for something more personal, for example. Don't do the strawman fallacy, which is you don't answer the person, or you don't argue with what people is saying. You argue with a cliche of what the person is saying. You just go to something. You just pretend the person is saying something very extreme, and you're criticizing this cliche of what the person is saying, and not exactly what the person is saying. It's easy to win an argument like that, but you will not have a good exchange. Try to do the contrary, the man of steel. Try to understand why the person believes what they believe. Try to rephrase. Okay, let me get it straight. What you believe is the earth is flat. Yes, okay. And you believe that because blah, 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 blah. So show the person you try to understand. First, it will be good for the person. The person will feel, okay, this person is not trying to attack me. This person is trying to understand me. And once you know that, once you have a good understanding of why the person believes what they believe, it will be easier to say, okay, now I understand why I disagree with you. And let me tell you why. Or you will say, okay, I understand better. And you're right. So it's very good to have this more peaceful argument where you try to understand the person and you don't try to fight the person. Okay? Don't forget, change is progressive. People will not change their mind in 5 minutes. Okay, principle of charity. Assume the person is honest, because usually this is the case. And try to understand the other side. This is a video I'm going to show you about someone doing that, trying to understand the other side and picking an argument based on what the other person is saying. Okay, it's a long-term process. And to finish, I will just give some personal example where some student will disagree with me on some gender issue and everything, what I did, why I did what I did, and what was the result. Okay, so this is just the last part of that. So this is a sum up of my training. Fake news is a loosey concept. There's no 100% safe method to check information, but it's okay. We have to keep trying. There's some cognitive bias that will impact your research. There's some concepts that can be useful to understand. There's some tips to dismiss information in a conflicted environment, and you have some tools to make those interactions much better in the future. Thank you very much.